Yeah, it's on the top. You see. Shall we start? I think so. Hi, everyone. So my name is Stefan Güttinger. I'm at the Janice Center. I'm lecturing in philosophy of data over there. I'm standing in today for Sabina because she can't be here, unfortunately. So I'm going to chair today's session. And so we're very pleased to have Emanuele Ratti here for our talk in the IDSAI Research Seminar Series. Emanuele, I'm just going to say a few, I've written down his rough trajectory. So he did his PhD at the European School of Molecular Medicine, which is also at the University of Milan. And that's a very unique program because there's actually the attempted, it's kind of shutting down now apparently, but like to include philosophers and embed them in the biomolecular research laboratories. So that's where he did his PhD, and he worked on basically data-intensive biology. And he kept his focus then on data-intensive research and data-driven research, and now data science and AI. So he then worked as a postdoctoral research fellow at University of Notre Dame, was also then a visiting assistant professor there. Then he was an assistant professor at the Johannes Kepler University in Linz, Austria. And just at the beginning of 2023, he took up a position as lecturer in philosophy of science and AI at Bristol University. And so, yeah, we're very pleased to have you here, Emanuele, and he will be talking about basically on the how of AI ethics, how to do it, and he will focus on how we should think about ethics-based auditing mechanisms or processes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Stefan, and thank you very much for being here and for inviting me in this talk. So, what I want today, I will present some, let's say, preliminary results of a project that I started in January, which is about auditing AI tools. But in doing this, I will, let's say, take a step back and tell you what I think AI ethics as a discipline should be. That's the kind of idea that I have. And so let me give you a little bit of background about AI ethics. So as you have noticed, people publishing in AI ethics, the publication in AI ethics have exploded in the past few years, and everyone can actually claim to be an AI ethicist. And I think that this is a positive development. However, given that this has exploded, let's say, so quickly, there are some problems with how we think about AI ethics as this. And so the question is, what is exactly AI ethics and how it should be conceptualized and operationalized, which is very important. And these are open questions. But I think that we can start from by drawing, let's say, some fundamental distinction in order to at least get a very preliminary understanding of what the role of ethics should be in the field of artificial intelligence. And the distinction I have in mind is a very basic distinction between hard governance and soft governance, which is mostly, let's say, motivated from kind of this work. So the hard governance of AI tools is the one which is provided by hard regulation. So it's a system of rules which is enforced by public institutions like governments or other things. And of course, there is still a lot to be done on this, but I think that the situation is not as bad as some people portrayed it. So we had before, like a few years ago, we had the GDPR, now we have the AI Act. Things can be perfected, of course, but I think we are in a pretty good position. But there is still like a lot to be done about soft governance of AI tools, where the soft governance is about the behavior that can allow some degree of flexibility. So those important decisions that have to be taken, which are not covered by hard regulation. And in this picture, let's say, standing between hard and soft governance, ethics has two roles. The first one is that, well, ethics can be used to shape hard regulation. And that's, I think, very uncontroversial because regulation are also shaped by ethical consideration, like consideration about values, about rights, about duties. I mean, not the only thing, but still, I mean, it's an important component. But then also I think that ethics, well, I'm not thinking, I mean, there are many other people thinking this, is that ethics can be a sensible guide also to navigate that territory which is not completely covered by hard regulation. And I like the way Florian put it. He says that, well, ethics can be used as a soft governance tool as what ought and ought not to be done over and above the existing regulation. So I'm talking today about ethics as soft governance. And I mean, there is, like AI ethics as a field, especially when it comes to soft governance, is still, let's say, in searching for its identity. And I think there are various proposals as to how to provide, let's say, a foundation for AI ethics as a soft governance tool. And some people go for principlism, other people from like the fair machine learning community, they have other ideas in mind. And I think that these two main approaches are flawed somehow. They have some issues, but I'm not going to talk about these things today. So I'm just going, let's say, to say something like more, let's say, a past consequence. And so that was like the background. And so in collaboration with the data scientist, Mark Race, we are working on this project that is supposed to create this new ethics-based auditing tool for the soft governance of medical AI, because Mark is a data scientist working in the medical context. And the project is funded by IBM and Technology Ethics Center. It's like a one-year project, so it's a sort of a seed project. And I mean, the interesting thing I think about the project is that we do not just, let's say, try to provide this new way of thinking about ethics-based auditing, but we also, let's say, do this by providing what we think are new foundations for AI ethics. And in particular, we think that AI ethics should be, let's say, created from the ground up, from the what is called the capability approach, which is a social, political, and economic theory about welfare and life quality. So that's basically our talk. And so today I'm going to present like some preliminary results. And so the plan for today is that given that we think about the AI ethics in terms of the capability approach, the first part of the talk will be about the capability approach. So I'm gonna try to say what the capability approach is, in my opinion, because it's a very broad term and it encompasses like different theories. Then I will try to convince you why the capability approach is a perfect match, perfect fit for artificial intelligence as a technology. Why it's really like the best deal that we can use in order to talk about ethics in the AI context. And then finally, I will say something about, let's say, this ethics-based auditing, again, like very preliminary, we are in the very early phases of this. Okay, so the capability approach. So the capability approach is a normative framework that is used to address issues of life quality in the context of policy. It's about, let's say, welfare. And in particular, the capability approach is used to make comparison about life quality across like different communities or different individuals. And it's used to design and evaluate various types of policies, and it's very flexible because it's about policies both in like affluent countries like the one where we live, welfare policies, but also development policy by governments and NGO in low and middle income countries. So it's really like very, very flexible. And it has been theorized in various ways, most famously by Max Sen. And I mean, I will use the kind of formulation made by Martha Nussbaum in several books and articles. So the cornerstone of the capability approach is that, I mean, individuals should have access not just to the necessary positive resources that they may need to live their own lives, but also they should be able to make choices that matter to them. Okay, so that they have, let's say, this substantial freedom of choosing whatever life, let's say, they want to. And so this idea has a lot of, let's say, ramification. And in particular, they find, so the first thing is that when we are assessing policies or institution or system, we should focus not just on what people have, but also on what people are able to do and to be. And so the focus should be especially on those positive policies, or the positive, let's say, components of policies that can improve freedom, but also on removing obstacles in individuals' lives so that they have more freedom to let's say, live their life so that they see free. And I mean, from this basic consideration, there is a fundamental distinction between functioning and capabilities. And this is a distinction that I think that everyone using the capability approach accepts. It's a very basic one. And so functioning are achievement, so the various things that people may value doing or being, from something, let's say, very basic and essential like being nourished to something more sophisticated like participating in a strike. And but I mean, and here is where the capability approach is different from more consequentialist approaches to welfare, is that measuring life quality only on the basis of achieved functioning is misleading. Because we should consider also the freedom that an individual has in deciding what functioning to achieve and how. And the example that is usually reported is the example between starving and fasting. Okay. So from the point of view of a welfare, let's say, theory that takes into account only functioning, people who are starving and people who are fasting, they are in the same situation because they both have a lack of nutritional intake. But from the point of view of the choices that these people have, then of course, people who are fasting are in a very, very different position than people who are starving. So their life quality is completely different. And so then the question is not what a person does or what a person has, but rather what a person is able to do and be. And these things that people are able to do and be are capabilities. Okay. So, which is a range of potential functioning that are feasible for a person to achieve, and that a person can freely choose to achieve. So, and then of course, I mean, the question is, okay, but I mean, what capabilities should we try to expand? So, what, let's say, responsibility, for instance, as governments we have with respect to which capabilities? Because there are many capabilities. For instance, there is the capability of wanting to become a hitman. But of course, I mean, it's not the kind of capability that we want to expand in individuals, right? And I mean, this problem of which capability is a very hard problem in the capability approach. Amartya Sen famously always, let's say, refused to give a list. But Martha Nussbaum, I think that she does something interesting because she has this list of these 10 capabilities. She called them, let's say, central capabilities. According to her, the task of the government is to ensure and secure to all citizens at least a threshold of these capabilities. Now, I mean, she doesn't really define the idea of what exactly a threshold is in this context. I think about the concept of threshold as something quantitative, but she doesn't go into the detail. But she said something interesting. She said, well, of course, I mean, depending on the particular society where you live, you can have other capabilities that as a society, for instance, we think are valuable to achieve. But you cannot remove any capability from this list. Because if you do, then, let's say, human dignity will be violated. So these are the central capabilities that according to the we should pursue. And whether a functioning is possible, so whether you have, let's say, the capability to realize it or to achieve it in the way you see fit, will depend on what people call conversion factors. Okay, so those factors that allow a person to turn a possibility into something actual. And there are, well, at least 3 categories of conversion factors. I think that there might be more. Conversion factors are things like metabolism, physical condition, reading skills. Sometimes Martha Nussbaum called them internal capabilities, though it's not clear exactly why they are capabilities. I mean, it's complicated. It doesn't matter for this talk. There are also social conversion factors like public policies, social norms, discriminating practices, gender roles, societal hierarchies. And then there are also environmental conversion factors, things like climate or geographical location. And Martha Nussbaum think that, so talks about, let's say, combined capabilities as including, let's say, the capability and the conversion factor. So you cannot have a capability without the conversion factors. And we can, let's say, explain like by means of a couple of examples. The bicycle, we'll talk about it later, is a typical example, but you can think about the policy for schooling, right? So let's say that you want to design a policy that will make mandatory for young boys and girls to go to school until they are 18. Okay, that's fantastic. I mean, it's like I mean, everyone has the opportunity to go to school. However, I mean, depending, for instance, on some social conversion factors, this policy will be effective or not, because maybe it is applied to a particular neighborhood or a city or a region of of the country you are considering, where, I don't know, there are some social norms that seems very suspiciously for young girls to go to school until they are 18. So yes, they have formally the opportunity to go there, but then in fact, they are not. So that's why it is important also to have the right social convention factor for these things to happen. And the more complex example is the idea of universal healthcare. Okay, so and the idea of universal healthcare is the view that everyone should have the opportunity to be healthy. But we all know that universal healthcare as a policy is not by itself sufficient for people to be healthy. And why is that? Well, because we have to think about. I'm sorry, this is like very small, but I hope you can get some of out of. But it is that. So the reason why it's not sufficient is because health is a capability. Okay? And for instance, I mean, if you consider the work of Jennifer Browger, and she made like some interesting work about the capability of being healthy or health as a capability. And she says, well, capability, so health as a capability is composed of health functioning, which are the actual health-related achievements, like being able to keep under control your diabetes or get like a particular, let's say, surgery, or being able, let's say, to watch, let's say, cholesterol and things like that. But then there is also health agency, okay? And agency here is the ability of the individual to achieve health goals that they value and act as agent of their own health. And so there is this emphasis on enabling, let's say, individuals to exercise personal responsibility over health goals. But the problem is that this ability, this agency is impacted by several conversion factors. And there are like internal conversion factors, like the fact that maybe you don't know anything about health. Okay. And now you are supposed to watch your diabetes if you don't know that, for instance, if you get like sugar food, then it's kind of say bad for your health. Or maybe like there are external factors, for instance, the fact that, I don't know, maybe like environmental factors, like the fact that, well, maybe you live in a location where it's very difficult to have access to healthcare. And maybe you can get like some help, but it still like takes plenty of time. Okay. So the idea is that, well, even in the presence of universal healthcare, if there are not, let's say, these different environments and conversion factors, then it's very difficult to exercise your own health agency. And so this is like the idea. So you have like resources, then you have combined capabilities, and then you have functioning, and the conversion factors, of course, they play like an important. Now, what is the relationship between capabilities and technology? And I'm talking about this because I'm interested in the relationship between capabilities and AI, but maybe we should say something more general about technology. AI is a kind of a technology, but there are many kinds. And I mean, it's very surprising that there is not much work in the capability field about technology. I mean, there is the interesting work by Osterlacher, for the past like 10 years or so. She has done like amazing work on this, but in general, it's not like a very hot topic, at least not as much as one would expect. And there is, of course, an obvious connection between technology and capabilities. And the first is that, well, technology can expand capabilities. And you can think about like a bicycle. Okay, so a bicycle is a piece of is a tool, is something that is designed as a piece of technology that can move you around. And when you move around, then you can expand several capabilities. So for instance, we go back, let's say, to the list here, then I mean, you can have like affiliation because you can go around. You can have also, let's say, play because maybe you can use your bike to go somewhere else, and so on. So it's like a very important thing. However, it's here like the same discourse that I've done about conversion factors applies also, because the technology expands capabilities only when it's in the right relationship with the conversion factors, the right conversion factors. And the example of the bicycle is again like very good, because if you live in the Netherlands where you have like a lot of bike paths, then the bicycle is really something that can expand your capabilities, right? Because you can really move around. But if you live in the desert where there are no bike paths, then I mean the bicycle is completely useless, right? And so this is like one connection. And there are also two other connections that I will not, so between technology and capabilities, I will not, let's say, go into the detail, but one thing is that technology also shapes the very socio-technical system, institution and practice in which we are also embedded. And then, of course, let's say, so think about how technology like ICT has changed healthcare or is changing healthcare, that of course will imply also change in the way we think about health agencies. And then also technology can influence our own interpretation of capabilities. If you think about like social media platform, they have they have given us a lot of thought about what does it mean to be in a meaningful relation with other people. What does it mean to communicate with other people, which has to do, of course, with the capability of application. So, and this is like the role of technology. Now, what about artificial intelligence? I'm running a little bit late here. So I think that the capability approach is the right framework to do two things with AI. So first of all, it provides a foundation to AI ethics, and second of all, is also very useful in operationalizing AI ethics in the first place. Okay, so let me just address these 2 points. So the first one is that the capability approach will tell us what is ethics in AI ethics. Because when you ask to people, okay, so you're doing AI ethics, but what is exactly ethics here? Well, duties, values, things like that. Well, it's not very precise. It's not very clear. Right? Well, the capability approach is super precise. And so, as I said a few slides ago, capabilities are what are called substantial freedoms, and they are about choosing ways of doing and being that we value and that matter to us. And by being about this substantial freedom and what we value, capabilities shape our own conception of what is the good life or the kind of life that we want to live. Okay? Because, of course, you want to live your life according to some plan, and depending on the capabilities that you have, you might be able to realize those things. But ethics is really about how one ought to live his own life and what the good life is. So capabilities are necessarily ethical, so ethically relevant. So that means that the moment in which you start talking about capabilities, you are also talking about freedoms, you are also talking about the good life, and then you're also talking about ethics. Okay, so these are, let's say, connected. And so then AI tools, as any other technology, but I think at a level that no other technology actually do, can potentially expand or restrict capabilities, right? And they have a profound impact, AI tools, on substantial freedom in the sense that AI tools structure and constrain the way humans interact, okay? And the way humans also act in different environments and what they can possibly achieve. So they are used with like as interfaces between us and the public book. So AI tools, they really shape and mediate our, and by doing this, they shape our perception of what we can possibly achieve, our perception of what is out there to value and for us to get, okay? So that's why they are like expand or restrict capabilities. And the important thing is that in many cases, AI tools do this in a very invisible way. It's a sort of, let's say, background technology that sometimes we don't even realize this. And so then what I'm saying is that by impacting capabilities, AI has ethical relevance, and it's not just ethical when it's doing something immoral, it's always ethical because it's going to expand, so to impact the capabilities, either by expanding them or by restricting them. So it can be for the good or it can be for the worse, but in any case, it's going to do that. And the second thing is that the capability approach is also very informative in saying when the AI is being ethically problematic. Okay? And the idea is that, well, the idea is that, well, of course, AI tools are being bad when they restrict capabilities, okay? But then how do we establish exactly this? Well, I think, and here is why the capability approach is very important, we have to think about how the capabilities, or the combined capabilities are constituted. So you have like these internal capabilities, then you have the social conversion factors, and you have the environmental conversion factors. So the idea is that we should look at the conversion factors in order to understand the impact of capabilities and think the following. So, I mean, it's going to be a little bit abstract at the beginning, but then I think it's big, so it can be more. So we can say that any AI tool has the aim of expanding the capability. I mean, people might not use, let's say, this word, but whatever, let's say, beneficial goal a particular AI tool has and the way it is advertised, then of course it will be about expanding some of these capabilities, okay? However, we know that the capability can be expanded by a technology only when the right conversion factors are in place. So then the question is that in designing an algorithmic system, which conversion factors a data scientist assume that the end users must have in order to benefit from the AI tool? Example, complete example. So I think that you might know this case, this example here. It's been like a few years ago, published in Science, very famous paper, okay? And it was like, I'm going to make like this story very, very short. So this algorithm was particularly bad. It was like an algorithm for assessing the health risk of individuals, and it was particularly bad, in particular with African American, in the sense that it was categorizing many African American as having a, let's say, negligible health risk, when in fact these individuals, they were at a very high risk. Okay? And I mean, there were many problems with this algorithm, but one problem was that it was using health expenditure as a proxy for health risk. And health expenditure, it is a proxy for health risk, because I mean, the more you spend on healthcare, the more it's highly probable that you are having some health issues. Okay. However, so health expenditure can be a proxy, let's say, for risk, only if you already have access to healthcare. And healthcare access is actually a conversion factor, okay? Because maybe you live in an area where there is no like healthcare facility, or maybe because you don't have a job that give you like an insurance that can pay for all these different things. And so basically having healthcare access implies all sorts of different social, environmental, and personal conversion factors that not all individuals might have. So the point is that these data scientists, these people working on this algorithm, they have assumed a homogeneous level of access to health expenditure. But then by doing this, they exclude all those individuals who do not have those conversion factors. Okay? And so it was, let's say, very bad. So that's why, in order to understand, let's say, the impact on the capability like health, then look at the kind of conversion factors that the AI tool consider or take into account in order to do whatever it does. So then I think about AI ethics as the investigation of the impact of AI tools on capabilities, and I think that it's composed, let's say, of mainly two questions or two steps. So the first one is, what configuration of conversion factors the users must have in order to benefit from the AI tool? And here, of course, you need to run like a philosophical and sociological investigation. And in the case of, for instance, like medical AI, well, you have to take into account social epidemiologists that will know everything about social determinants of health, for instance. And then the second point is that our data that are somehow related to conversion factors are computationally modeled and processed. And that would be like a sort of, let's say, technical investigation. So going into the nitty-gritty of how data science tools are trained and designed in order to understand what is the relationship between the tool and the conversion factors. And now the AI tool, let's say, make visible or make invisible certain conversion factors. So it means that, well, once you have an answer to the first question, then you are also in a position to understand how the AI tool is going to potentially impact capabilities. And let me show you like this, like very, very quickly with our case study of the ethics-based auditing in medical. So, well, I'm going to say like a few things about auditing. I mean, auditing, I'm pretty sure that you know everything about auditing, but it's typically like this systematic process where you gather information or evidence about how a system functions, and then you communicate the result with various stakeholders. So you kind of, let's say, want to see how the system works. And the system functionality is usually understood in comparison to some claims that designers have made about the tool. So we say, well, as a designer, as a practitioner, as people building the system, we say that it's going to do X, then the audit is going to check whether the system is actually doing that thing. Okay? And there are like different type of audits, like internal versus external audit, compliance versus risk audit. One particular distinction is this one, because the compliance audit, they are provide a measure of how a system is doing with respect to certain benchmark or certain, let's say, regulation. And then there are like this risk-based auditing, which I don't know exactly why they are called them, let's say, risk, because they are not always about risk. So they ask, let's say, more open question when maybe like the alignment between the claim functionality and the functionality is less straightforward. Okay? And in AI, I mean, we have like this functionality model and impact audit. So that's basically. So then what is this idea of ethics-based audit, which is what other people have proposed and what we are trying, let's say, to shape on the basis of the capability approach. Well, ethics-based auditing, so EBA, is a way of auditing tools by looking at the ethical dimension of such tools. So it is that we investigate some characteristic of AI tools, how they behave under different circumstances, and then you conclude whether the tool is compliant to a set of principles or values. And especially if you do internal auditing within like a company, for instance, this process of ethics-based auditing also serves the goal of stimulating a more pro-ethical design, rather than just, let's say, analyzing the system after it has been designed, and maybe you do like within the same process. And I mean, it falls like under the category of risk-based auditing because even though you want the compliance with a certain set of principles or values, at the same time, the alignment, the value alignment, which is actually a problem in AI ethics, is less straightforward. And it can be external or internal, and it covers like different aspects. And in general, I mean, the existing ethics-based auditing framework, they are all based either like on principlism or on measure coming from the entire machine learning community of this. And again, I think these two approaches have problems, but again, I'm just going to go straight, let's say, to the constructive one, which is that we think that ethics-based auditing should be conceptualized in terms of the capability approach, exactly in the way I just showed. And it is that, well, you have to ask, let's say, two questions anytime you want, let's say, an ethics-based auditing to start. And the first question is, well, which capability the AI is supposed to expand? So which capability the designer have claimed that the AI should be about? And then you have to start from something like Martha Nussbaum's list of the 10 central capabilities. And it can be also, let's say, more focused. And then the second question is, well, how do we measure or at least identify the impact of algorithmic systems on those same capabilities that the AI tool is supposed to expand? And then the answer is, well, let's focus on the conversion factors. So in our case, in the case of medical AI, we have something like this. So the first question is, well, of course, we are going to focus on health as a capability, and then in particular also on how health capability can affect other capabilities. And that's because there is a whole debate about health as a capability. Some people say, well, health is not really a capability, it's more a necessary condition for all the other capabilities to be there. But I think it can be, let's say, genuinely a capability. And again, it is defined as the ability to be healthy and to choose the particular health function that one values. And then, of course, it is it encompasses, let's say different aspects. So expanding health capability means expanding individuals' opportunities of converting health resources into health functioning in ways that people value. Then what about the second question? So how do we assess the impact on capability? So as I said, we will have to focus on conversion factors. And so in the sense that Mark and myself, we conceptualize the impact on capabilities via the relation between the AI and the conversion factor itself. So you have to ask questions like, which conversion factors and technology like AI needs in order to fulfill its promise of F capability expansion, for instance. And how do conversion factors are treated by AI practitioners? So, and here you have a representation of what health capability is. That is at the intersection of these different type of conversion factors. So you have like public health and healthcare system, then you have macro social, political, economical environment, then biology and genetic predisposition, intermediate social context. So the impact of AI on the health capability should be inferred by looking at how the AI is treating all these different aspects. Okay. And so concretely, but this is like very early phase, and Mark is supposed to take care of this because he's the technical person here. We are developing a prototype that would be able to identify relevant relevant loci for capabilities impact in algorithmic systems. And so starting from the idea that we should have some sort of, let's say, documentation about how these tools are built, it is that, well, the prototype will identify and process terms in technical documentation where data about conversion factors of the capability are mentioned, okay, or curated or processed. And this is within a particular structure for AD-based auditing that we think is composed of 4 phases. So the first one is that data scientists are asked to compile a detailed document on how they have built the tools itself, and also something like data sheets. And I will talk about this in a second. Then the second step is that this prototype that we are thinking about will examine this relevant documentation and identify, let's say, important loci well these things about conversion factors are actually mentioned. And then the result of the prototype will be presented to relevant internal auditors, including social scientists and ethicists in particular, and then of course they will draw, let's say, some conclusion. And then internal auditors will run a workshop discussing the result with data scientists in order to see how the tool itself can be modified in order to really expand the capability and not restrict them. So, and I'd just like to say, to have like a very quick example. This is a kind of things that Mark has worked in the past years. So that's the typical thing that many data scientists are asked to do in the healthcare sector and by pharmaceutical companies. So like the case of a company trying to improve health outcomes by delivering customized nutritional meals to patients with diabetes and cardiovascular disease. And so what this tool is supposed to do, so that the AI tool will select patients that fit a certain profile to be enrolled in these programs. And of course, the people that will fit this profile will be the one that really needs this kind of role. And you have something like an external audit that will look, of course, at the clinical improvements of the people involved in the program, and also whether there are some discrepancies across socioeconomic class, gender, or ethnic groups. But then an internal audit will focus more on the capability approach, try to anticipate any systematic exclusion in the way these things are designed. And but then, of course, I mean, what does it mean to investigate the impact of AI tools on capabilities by looking at conversion factors? Well, it means going through the documentation compiled by the data scientists working on the project about all these different phases of design, okay? And see how conversion factors are treated in all of these different things. And so this last phase is probably, let's say, relevant, especially for external audit. So I'm not going to talk about that. But the idea is that in all these different phases, there are things that might be relevant for conversion factors, and then for the impact on capabilities. So, for instance, you can start like with problem understanding and definition. So one question is, for instance, how the problem that the AI tool is supposed to solve is being formulated in the first place. So what is the goal of the system, and whether this goal, for instance, can be translated quite easily into something about health agency. And just 1 second. And then the second phase is the phase of data acquisition. And here, of course, typical data sheets are relevant, and useful information about how AI tools take into account conversion factors really abound in this phase, because you have variables of feature that electronic health records contains that are related to conversion factors, like what kind of, let's say, information doctors' notes contain about the relevant internal capability of patients, whether they have an understanding of their own health or things like that, or how do features of data useful to understand the social and environmental factors in which data subjects actually are living. And another thing that I think is very useful here is to think about data provenance, and because data provenance and because data quality. Think about data quality, because data quality is also a very good proxy for data provenance. So, for instance, when you select unstructured electronic health records data, a data scientist, especially in this field, and that's what Mark was telling me. They might be, let's say, tempted to use only very high quality data. So data that are exported very cleanly from electronic medical records. And why is that? Well, because then you have to understand and prepare the data, and that's a lot of work. So if you have like high quality data, then it gets your work, let's say, much easier, right? And so that means that there is this tendency of excluding, let's say, data set require what is called optical character recognition, OCR, and of scan or fax documents. And but the problem is that if data sets are in OCR because they come from underserved areas, so from area where, for instance, people do not have a very poor infrastructure, healthcare-related poor infrastructure, or it's very difficult to get access to healthcare, or there are, let's say, fewer doctors and so on and so forth. Then, of course, I mean, you are kind of, let's say, excluding a bunch of, let's say, of individuals systematically from your staff. So, I mean, this means that even something like the data quality can tell you a lot about the operational factors. And then, so of course, you have something like data understanding and preparation, which is another important phase. And for instance, here one may ask question about how you have handled missing. So they can be like, of course, like missing completely at random, missing at random, and missing not at random. However, I mean, if you think about that, maybe like in our example of diabetes, to measure the effect of the intervention, one might choose, for instance, participants who regularly have fasting glucose tests, because changing in those results can be very important to understand whether the intervention affected blood sugar, for instance. And but I mean, the problem is that even though some participant glucose tests might not be obviously missing, if they have less frequent testing due to other health conditions or unrecognized social factors, then it means that you are going to exclude these individuals for the very same reasons that they need the treatment in the first place. And then, of course, like similar questions can be asked also for data analysis and modeling, model validation, interpretation. And we are, as part of the project, because then we want, let's say, this prototype to be able to identify all these things, we are trying to prepare like a very detailed list of all these things. And so then, as I said, like the results are presented to the auditors, and analyze this result, and then they will run a workshop with data scientists. And here, let's say, many things can be discussed. Okay? And for instance, you will discuss how the goal of the system is being formulated with respect to capabilities. Okay? And the goal is having access to nutritional food. And it's something that can indeed be related to health capability, right? However, maybe you conceptualize also like a successful intervention in terms of self-glucose test that these people will have to take. But then, of course, I mean, this is very problematic because taking, let's say, a glucose test, a self-glucose test, then implies a lot of, let's say, health self-knowledge that not all individuals might have. Okay? So then you are assuming a lot about their own conversion factors, and maybe you should. And or like in the case of the OCR versus the high quality data, auditors and data scientists may discuss, for instance, if there are differences in high quality data between OCR with respect to economic, social, and environmental circumstances, for instance. And then, I mean, you can discuss like, all these different things. And another thing is that ideally, so the auditing tool can be complemented to process the result to see how exclusion criteria like overlap with social group with protected characteristics. And here you can really, let's say, complement this work with the kind of work of fair machine learning community. And you will choose like certain fairness measure. But the thing is that usually in this community, people tend to uncritically accept like one measure or the other. So there is not like an ethical discussion of why we should use a certain measure rather than another. While here, of course, choosing the fairness measure will be part of this discussion of this, let's say, pro-ethical design. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much already. We have 15 minutes for questions. Shall we maybe punch there and then we can see the people on Zoom as well? You can raise your hand.